Take it, Marjorie hissed, thrusting a black garbage bag into my chest so hard I stumbled backward onto the porch. That's all you get. I stared at the bag, half full of clothes and smelling like cigarette smoke. What is this? Your things, she snapped, lighting another menthol. Your father's dead, and all he left us was debt. Thanks to you. The door slammed before I could answer. Through the window, I saw Travis smirking, a devilish shadow behind the curtain. Claire stood beside him, arms crossed, refusing to meet my eyes. I was 16, standing in the freezing January wind of Maplewood, Kansas, holding my life in a trash bag like I was being hauled to the curb. That was 20 years ago. Now, I was mopping floors at New Horizons recovery home in Denver when Linda poked her head into the supply closet. Ethan, there's a call for you. Some lawyer from New York. Says he's been trying to reach you for 3 years. I almost laughed. A lawyer? For what? Unpaid taxes on my mop bucket. She shrugged. He sounded serious. The receiver felt heavy in my hand. Ethan Cole speaking. Mr. Cole, said a voice smooth and crisp, the kind that came from expensive offices and Manhattan skyscrapers. My name is Richard Sterling, from Sterling and Hawthorne Associates. I represent the estate of Margaret Cole. Never heard of her, I said. Please don't hang up. Are you the son of Daniel Cole? The name punched the air out of me. No one had spoken my father's full name in 20 years. How do you know that name? Because Margaret Cole was your grandmother, and she left you everything. I almost dropped the phone. There must be a mistake. My father was an orphan. Not quite, he said softly. Your father left home at 18. Your grandmother never stopped searching for him. When she learned what happened to you, she changed her will. Mr. Cole, you've inherited $89 million. The mop handle clattered to the floor. What? I know this is a shock, Sterling continued. But your stepmother, Marjorie Blake, lied to you. Your father didn't die broke. He owned several hardware stores, had insurance, investments. Your medical bills were fully covered. She fabricated debt, sold his assets, and kept the money. I leaned against the wall, the world tilting. She said my medical bills were $500,000. She showed me the notices. She forged them. She told the court she was the only heir and liquidated $2 million in assets. You were never a burden, Ethan. You were a victim. The words hit like a sledgehammer. $2 million. $2 million stolen from the boy she threw out with the trash. I need to meet with you, Sterling said. There's a letter from your grandmother. She wanted me to read it in person, to make sure you know you were loved. That word, loved, broke something inside me. For 20 years, I'd believed I was worthless. I'd lived in shelters, under bridges, convinced my life was a punishment for being born. When I hung up, I sat in that closet, staring at the mop water reflecting the flickering light above me. My name is Ethan Cole. At 16, I was thrown away by a woman who stole my inheritance and told me I was the reason my family lived in poverty. At 36, I found out it was all a lie. I live now in a tiny studio apartment in Denver. Peeling paint, creaky floors, windows that let the wind in. But it's mine. My own key, my own lock. Every morning I wake up and remind myself that freedom doesn't come from fortune. It comes from truth. I spend my days helping people at New Horizons, men and women who've hit rock bottom, just like I did. They look at me and see someone who's been there, who knows what it's like to believe you don't deserve another chance. Growing up, every breath I took was an apology. Marjorie used to remind me how expensive my existence had been. You drained this family dry, she'd sneer while handing me half a slice of toast. 3 months in the NICU, surgeries, doctors, $500,000 down the drain. You're lucky we didn't just let nature take its course. Even as a kid, I believed her. I thought my father had died paying my bill to stay alive. Travis made sure I never forgot it. Mom says we could have had a pool, he'd taunt, shoving me into lockers. Could have gone to Disney. But you sucked all the fun out before you could even walk. Claire's words were quieter, but sharper. I don't blame you, she said once. But every time Mom cries over money, I kind of do. By 14, I had a job washing dishes at Miller's Diner, handing every paycheck to Marjorie. Not enough, she'd say, tucking the envelope into her purse. But at least you're trying to pay us back. I didn't go to parties. Didn't date. Didn't dream. I didn't think I was allowed to. And then, on my 16th birthday, she decided my debt had come due. That morning she woke me before sunrise. Get up, she barked. You think birthdays mean breakfast in bed? Move. I stumbled into the kitchen, half asleep, frying eggs for the family that hated me. Travis walked in first, eating without a glance. Claire followed, complaining about wearing the same dress to school again. Marjorie sat at the table, smoke curling from her cigarette, flipping through a pile of bills I now know were fake. When breakfast was over, she stood, grabbed a garbage bag from under the sink, and started stuffing my clothes inside. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Ending a mistake," she said. "You're 16, old enough to make it on your own. Lord knows you've cost enough already." That was the day I learned what it feels like to be disposable. Now, 20 years later, I know the truth. I was never disposable. I was stolen from, lied to, broken so she could build her own comfort out of my father's money. When I finally sat in Sterling's office, surrounded by marble floors and leather chairs, he handed me an envelope with my name written in elegant handwriting. It was my grandmother's letter. "My dearest Ethan," it began. "If you're reading this, then I've finally found you. You were never the debt they said you were. You were the gift I prayed for, the last piece of your father I had left. If life was cruel to you, it's because others were too afraid to face their own emptiness. Use what I've left you to live, not to hate. And remember, you were loved every single day you were lost." I read it 3 times, tears blurring the words. For the first time in 20 years, I didn't feel worthless. I felt found. My name is Ethan Cole. I was thrown away like trash, but I've learned something priceless. When the wrong people throw you out, it's not rejection, it's release. Because what they meant for destruction might just be the beginning of your freedom. "Happy birthday to me," I muttered under my breath, scraping the last of the eggs from Travis's plate. "What was that?" Marjorie's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Nothing," I said quickly. "Just talking to myself." "Good. Hurry up, or you'll miss the bus." I grabbed my backpack, the same one I'd been using since middle school, duct-taped where the zipper used to be, and slung it over my shoulder. I was halfway to the door when Marjorie stood, hiding something behind her back. "Actually, Ethan, wait a minute." For a second, my chest lifted. Maybe she'd gotten me something. A card. Maybe even just a happy birthday. She pulled out a black garbage bag. It was already full. "What's that?" I asked, though I already knew. "Your things. You're 16 now, old enough to work full-time. It's time for you to go." The words didn't make sense at first. They just hovered between us like smoke. "Go where?" "I don't care where. Just not here." "But this is my home," I said. "You're my mother." She laughed, a bitter, scraping sound. "I'm not your mother. Your mother died giving birth to you. I'm the idiot who married your father thinking he was successful, only to find out he'd sold everything to pay your medical bills." "I'll quit school," I said desperately. "I'll work more hours at the diner. I'll give you everything I make. You already give me everything, and it's not enough. It will never be enough. You owe this family $500,000. You'll never pay that back, not even if you work every day until you die." Travis appeared in the doorway, grinning. "Mom's been planning this for months. We're moving to California next week. Aunt Patricia got her a job. Fresh start. No baggage." "I'm not baggage," I said quietly. "I'm your brother." "Stepbrother," he corrected. "And not even that anymore." Claire came down the stairs, her face pale. "Mom, maybe we should wait until summer. Let him finish school." "We've waited 13 years, Marjorie snapped. 13 years of debt, phone calls, and humiliation. 13 years of watching everyone else move forward while we drown. I'm done waiting." She shoved the garbage bag into my chest. "Your father chose you over us. He destroyed our future to save your life. Well, he's gone, and I'm choosing us now. Please," I said, hating how weak my voice sounded. "It's freezing outside. Where am I supposed to go? You should have thought about that before you ruined us." She reached to close the door, but I stopped it with my hand. "This is illegal," I said. "You can't just throw me out. I'll call the police." She leaned close, her breath sharp with menthol. "Go ahead. Tell them how we fed you, clothed you, kept a roof over your head while drowning in debt you caused. Tell them how the collectors hound us every day. See if they care about one ungrateful kid who won't leave when told." "I'll tell them you're lying." "With what proof?" she said, her eyes glinting. "I've got medical bills, notices, bankruptcy papers. What do you have?" "I had nothing." "That's what I thought," she said coldly. "Now get off my porch before I call the cops and tell them you're trespassing." The door slammed. The deadbolt clicked. The chain slid into place. Through the window, I saw Travis high-fiving her, laughing. Claire turned and ran upstairs. I stood on that porch for 3 hours, waiting for someone, anyone, to open the door, to tell me it was a cruel joke. But when a locksmith van pulled into the driveway and a man stepped out with a toolbox, I knew it was real. "You need to move, kid," he said softly. "They're changing the locks." I picked up the garbage bag and walked down the street, the January wind slicing through my thin jacket. My breath turned to clouds in the freezing air. My shoes had holes, my hands were numb, and everything I owned was in that black plastic bag, the kind people use for trash. That first night behind Miller's Diner nearly killed me. The temperature dropped to 12 degrees. I layered on every piece of clothing I had, but it wasn't enough. My fingers went stiff, my feet stopped hurting, which was worse, and I started to drift, heavy and slow, like falling asleep underwater. I forced myself up, slapping my arms, doing jumping jacks in the dark. If I stopped moving, I'd die. When Frank Miller found me at dawn, he nearly dropped his keys. "Jesus, Ethan, what the hell are you doing out here?" I tried to speak, but my lips were too numb. He dragged me inside, sat me by the ovens, and made me drink coffee until my hands stopped shaking. When I told him what happened, he went red with anger. "That woman threw you out?" "In January. She said I cost too much," I whispered. "The medical bills. From when I was a baby." He let me sleep in the storage room that week, brought me blankets, leftovers. His wife didn't approve. "We can't harbor a runaway," she said. "It's illegal. We'll lose everything." "I can't go back," I told them. "Foster care means they'll just send me back to her." So I left. I learned to survive in the cracks of the world. Under bridges, behind laundromats, anywhere with a vent that blew warm air. I learned which restaurants threw out good food, which truck stops had clean showers, which churches wouldn't call the cops if you left by morning. The worst part wasn't hunger. It was invisibility. When people look through you long enough, you start to believe maybe you really are what they think. Nothing. Trash. At 19, I got arrested for sleeping behind a grocery store. The judge gave me 2 choices: jail or a rehabilitation program at St. Augustine's Mission. I chose the Mission. That's where I met Father Michael. He caught me fixing their broken computer and said, "You're smart. Why aren't you in school?" "School costs money," I told him. "Everything costs money. I already cost too much." He looked at me for a long time. "The only thing you ever cost was love," he said. "And that's supposed to be free." He helped me get my GED, then enroll in community college. At 25, I got a warehouse job, steady, boring, honest work. I stayed at the Mission a year longer than I needed to, saving every cent. When people asked why, I said, "Because I need to prove something." I just didn't know what. At 30, I applied for a job at New Horizons Recovery Home. Linda, the director, interviewed me. "Why do you want to work here?" "Because I know what it's like to think you're worthless," I said. "I want to remind people they're not." She hired me as a janitor. I worked my way up to counselor. Every person who walked in with their life in a garbage bag, I saw myself. For years, I never looked for Marjorie, Travis, or Claire. Some nights, though, I'd wonder if they ever thought about me. If they wondered whether I lived or froze to death that night behind the diner. Then, 3 days after that call from Richard Sterling's office, I sat across from him in a Manhattan skyscraper, 40 floors above the city. The place smelled like wealth, leather, polished wood, expensive coffee. Sterling was older, silver-haired, calm. He slid a folder across the desk. "Before we start," he said, "you should prepare yourself. This won't be easy to hear." I gave a dry laugh. "I've been homeless for 20 years because my stepmother said I bankrupted my family. Whatever you tell me can't be worse." He nodded and opened the folder. "This," he said, holding up a photograph, "is your father, Daniel Cole, and your grandmother, Margaret Cole." They stood in front of a mansion, my father barely 20, dressed in a suit, next to a woman whose pearls could have paid for a house. "That can't be right," I said. "My father was poor." "Your father was born into one of the wealthiest families in New England." The Cole family made their fortune in mining. By the time he was born, the family's assets exceeded $300 million. I stared at the photograph. "Then why did he end up in Kansas?" "Love," Sterling said simply. "He fell in love with your mother, Emily. She worked at a charity gala. Your grandmother forbade the relationship, so he walked away. He gave up everything for her." Sterling handed me another photo, a young woman in a catering uniform, smiling at something off camera. When your mother died giving birth to you, your father was devastated but determined to give you a good life. He opened 3 hardware stores, had insurance, investments, savings, even a college fund for you. Your medical bills were covered almost entirely by insurance and a trust from your mother's parents. His total out-of-pocket cost was about $30,000. He paid it off within a year. $30,000. I whispered. Marjorie said $500,000. She fabricated the debt, Sterling said quietly. After your father's death, she destroyed the real documents, forged new ones, and told the court she needed to liquidate assets to cover expenses. No one questioned her. She sold the stores, cashed the insurance policies, and walked away with $2 million. I gripped the edge of the chair, and then she threw me out with a garbage bag. Sterling's eyes softened. Within a year, she bought a house in California for cash, set up college funds for Travis and Claire, invested the rest. By the time she kicked you out, the money had grown to nearly $3 million. I felt sick. She had all that money, and she still said I was too expensive to keep. I'm afraid so, he said. But there's something she didn't know. Your grandmother never stopped looking for you. When your father died, she hired investigators. They reported everything. The lies, the theft, and the day you were thrown out at 16. I swallowed hard, my chest tight. Sterling reached into the folder again and slid an envelope toward me. My name was written on it in graceful, looping script. Your grandmother left you this, he said. She wanted to make sure you knew. You were never forgotten. I traced the letters of my name with a shaking hand. For the first time in 20 years, I didn't feel like garbage. I felt seen. Richard Sterling slid another file toward me across his mahogany desk. January 15th, he said quietly. Subject expelled from family home on 16th birthday. Temperature 12 degrees Fahrenheit. Given personal belongings in a garbage bag. Waited on porch approximately 3 hours before the locks were changed. Subject last seen walking toward Maplewood's commercial district. His voice softened. Your grandmother started searching the next day. She hired investigators, posted rewards, reached out to hospitals and shelters. But you vanished. It took her years to accept that you might be gone, or that maybe you didn't want to be found. The guilt haunted her until the day she died. He opened a final envelope and slid it toward me. 3 years before her passing, she rewrote her will. Everything, her estate, investments, real estate holdings, and family trusts, now belongs to you. After taxes and charitable distributions, your inheritance totals approximately $89 million. I couldn't find words. Why? I asked finally. She never met me. Richard's eyes were kind. Because she finally understood what she'd destroyed chasing power and pride. She lost her son to control and wealth. And when she discovered how that same obsession destroyed your life, she was determined to make things right. He handed me a sealed letter, the wax stamped with an ornate M. My hands trembled as I opened it. The handwriting was graceful but unsteady, written by someone fighting against time. My dearest Ethan, I failed your father, and by doing so, I failed you. My pride cost me the only family I ever had. When I learned what that woman did, how she stole my son's fortune and threw you away like refuse, I knew I could not die without trying to mend what I'd broken. Your father called me once, after your birth. He said you were perfect. He said holding you made every argument between us seem meaningless. He wanted me to meet you. I refused. A week later, he was gone. I've lived with that regret for decades. I cannot undo my mistakes, Ethan, but I can make sure you never again believe you were a burden. Your father loved you more than his own life. You are not too expensive, not too difficult. You are enough. Use what I leave you to heal, to help others, to live with dignity and joy. And if your heart allows, forgive an old woman who learned too late what truly matters. With love always. Your grandmother, Margaret Cole. When I finished reading, I couldn't stop shaking. For 20 years, I believed I was a debt, a mistake, something that cost too much to love. Now, sitting in a skyscraper office above Manhattan, I cried for the first time in decades. Not for the money, but for the truth. My father hadn't gone broke saving me. He'd chosen love over fortune. My grandmother had spent her last years trying to make that love reach me. I wasn't garbage. I never had been. The first thing I did with the inheritance wasn't to buy anything. I went straight to New Horizons Recovery Home and doubled their yearly funding. Then I started a new program for homeless teens thrown away by their families. The ones who carried their lives in trash bags like I once did. We called it Cole House, after my father's name, the man who gave everything for love. Eventually, I hired investigators, not to punish, but to understand. They found Marjorie Blake living in Malibu in a $4 million house with an ocean view. Travis was a Beverly Hills plastic surgeon. Claire owned a luxury boutique in Santa Monica. They'd built golden lives on money stolen from my father and from me. My attorney said I could sue them easily. Fraud, embezzlement, abandonment, emotional trauma, the evidence was airtight. But when I told Linda, the director at New Horizons, she said something that made me stop. Ethan, people like that wake up every day knowing what they did. That's a sentence no court can match. So instead of lawsuits, I sent them letters. Each included a single photograph. Me at the grand opening of Cole House, surrounded by young people who had been thrown away and were learning to stand again. Beneath the photo, I wrote only one line. I know the truth now, and I forgive you. Claire called me within an hour, her voice breaking with tears. Ethan, I swear I didn't know. Mom said the medical bills ruined us. She showed us papers. I thought you were the reason we lost everything. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. I believed her. I'm so sorry. We've spoken since then, cautiously rebuilding something that was stolen from both of us. She told me that after high school, she wondered why her mother suddenly had money for college and a new house. Mom said it was an inheritance from a distant cousin, she admitted. I wanted to believe her. Travis never called, but Claire told me he'd started therapy after receiving my letter. He remembers everything, she said. Every time he mocked you. Every time he laughed. He says he fixes people's faces because he can't fix what's broken inside him. Marjorie never replied. But through Claire, I heard she'd become consumed with anxiety, terrified I'd expose her and destroy the reputation she'd built in her glittering Malibu world. She'd told everyone there she was a widowed mother who'd struggled alone to raise 3 children after tragedy. The truth would shatter the fiction she'd lived on. I won't expose her. Living with the truth is its own punishment. Every ocean breeze she enjoys, every glass of champagne she raises is shadowed by the memory of a 16-year-old boy she locked out in the freezing dark. The real inheritance wasn't the money. It was the truth. My father hadn't chosen debt. He'd chosen love. And that kind of love doesn't measure worth in dollars. Last month, a 16-year-old girl arrived at Cole House, carrying her life in a plastic garbage bag. Her parents had thrown her out after she got pregnant. As I showed her to her room, clean bed, warm light, safety, she looked at me and asked, "Why do you care what happens to me? You don't even know me." I thought about my father, about my grandmother, about 20 years of believing I was unlovable. Then I said, someone once convinced me I was too expensive to keep. It took me 20 years to learn they were wrong. You're not too much, too broken, or too costly. You're exactly enough. And this place isn't charity. It's justice. It's what you deserve just for being human. She started crying, and I remembered that night behind Murphy's diner, freezing and alone, wondering if I mattered. I remembered the cold, the hunger, the numbness, and then I remembered the warmth that came from learning the truth. That love doesn't keep receipts. My name is Ethan Cole. I am my father's son, my grandmother's redemption, and no one's burden. At 16, I was handed a garbage bag and told I was worthless. At 36, I learned I was worth more than gold, because I survived long enough to find the truth. Every young person who walks through Cole House learns that same truth. That being thrown away doesn't mean you're trash. It means you were too valuable for small-hearted people to understand your worth. That's the real inheritance. Not money, but truth. Truth that rebuilds what lies destroyed. Truth that turns a garbage bag into a symbol of survival. Truth that transforms pain into purpose. Marjorie stole my inheritance, but she could never steal what mattered most. My father's love, my grandmother's atonement, and my belief that no one is too expensive to love. Because real love, pure, unconditional love, never sends a bill.